I went to Customer Contact Week a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas. And if you don't know what Customer Contact Week is, you might also see it as CCW, but it is the largest contact center event in the world. I was really excited to walk around the floor, attend the sessions, and talk to a bunch of amazing people in the contact center space while representing Shift Off. The most exciting learning that I had as it pertains to Shift Off and what we're building is the amount of talk and discussion around GigCX. Honestly, that I hadn't heard before, but even more interestingly, the shift in the way that we're talking about GigCX. When we first started the company back in early 2020, GigCX, in my opinion, was more the reception of the discussion was what a great or an interesting novel idea. But today, and especially at this event in Las Vegas, I heard a very different tone. Instead of idea, I heard it evolve to inevitability. And that actually that word isn't even mine. I picked that out of one of the sessions I attended, and it just stuck with me. It echoes with me because going from idea to inevitability means that we all need to be really thinking about GigCX. So I think it makes sense to talk a little bit more about GigCX. So you'll hear even more from me. I want to make sure that we're all really clear and you have me as a resource to understand what is GigCX, why does it matter, who's adopting it, how does it work, do we know if it works, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to let you know that this is one of the areas where we're going to really lean in and try to help educate the market a little bit, um, because we're all dealing with uh, a lot right now. As a contact center operator, I don't know that we've ever had a more difficult time with hiring becoming a problem and also the economy. These are going to offer a lot of challenges to contact center operators, and I think GigCX can help us get through that. So last week I published an article on LinkedIn. I think just scratched the surface on what is GigCX and who are the industry leaders that have already adopted it. I'll encourage you to read it, but I also wanted to cover some of the high level key points in this video today. So I thought I'd answer a few questions. One, what is GigCX? Why is it getting so much attention lately? Obviously, my opinions here, not necessarily, you know, not everyone's opinions, but how can GigCX help my business? And how do we know it works? So I'm going to just hit these questions in order and give you my quick 30-second response to each one. And I expect we'll go deeper into each of these questions as we go. So the first, what is GigCX? Really, GigCX stands for Gig Customer Experience. And Gig is really referencing a staffing model. We are all really familiar with it. Think Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, Upwork. These have been emerging for the last 15 years and have really become interwoven into our workforce and the companies that we often rely on. Uber and Lyft have had a tremendous impact on taxi services, right? I think all of us synonymously say Uber and Lyft as our first reaction when we need to get somewhere and we don't have a car. DoorDash and Instacart, food deliveries totally changed the game, as well as Upwork, where you go for professional services. So we're seeing that the gig economy can really apply across multitude of industries. When you think of gig CX, this is really the contact center customer experience and adaptation to gig. And gig CX has, I think, become the term. I think we're playing with a few terms out there, but gig CX is the one I hear the most about kind of verticalizing this particular delivery of customer experience where we're using gig economy workers. They're typically independent contractors. They interact with the company on their own terms. They build their own schedules. They are in charge. Contact centers typically haven't been that flexible. They don't offer those types of perks. Adapting to this model, it takes some thought and technology and expertise. And so this is where this gig CX vertical is emerging. And again, when you think about this, Shift Off, when you think about our company, we're a partner, a gig CX partner. So we work with brands and other BPOs to offer the benefits of gig into an existing business. Supplement, augment, whatever the words are, we partner and we help gig exist within the business. Why is it getting so much attention lately? So here's what I think, and I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think number one, it's hiring challenges especially in the US. And by the way, shift off is 100% US. We can go into a lot of the reasons why we want to focus in the US, but we're excited to be US only. It's been a challenge to hire here for full-time work. I think it's driven by two things. We talk about this a lot. Flexibility being number one, fair pay being number two. It's amazing that flexibility is even more than pay. I don't think we would have known that had it not been for the massive amounts of change that we've had over the past 2.5 years. Like I said, contact centers aren't very flexible. So flexibility is an even bigger issue here because contact centers usually operate with very meticulous structure and managing people's times. Even like the bathroom breaks are mandated in a contact center, where a lot of the younger generations, like late millennials and Gen Z, want a lot more autonomy over their time and their location, how much they work, how little they work, how much they make. All of that's really important to this, entry level worker today, which again, contact centers have a hard time with. So I think this is one of the reasons GigCX is a big deal. The other thing I would mention, and maybe even bigger as we go forward, is sort of the economic headwinds we're up against. So inflation is a big deal. It's going to challenge uh, access to cash, whether it's to the consumer, so business might be slowing down, or to investors, so funding might slow down. And so I think CFOs and other and executives are looking at this saying, okay, how do we tighten up so that we can survive or perhaps thrive in a sort of changing economy? And so Gig CX offers this really cool opportunity, especially with shift off, to remain in the US and reduce costs by 35%. Some of our clients see about 48% savings. So very, very large savings using a flexible workforce versus a static workforce. And this could have a really material positive impact on the customer experience and also the bottom line. And so I think this is where we need to be kind of thinking through strategically, how do you get through the budget season, or maybe 2023 planning, or second half 2022 planning. I think GigCX is going to be, or should be at least, on the docket of conversation, and I think that's what we're one of the reasons it's driving some of the excitement. The next question: how can GigCX help my business? There are so many reasons you'd want to implement a GigCX model into your contact center. But at a high level, the four areas that I think really, really important are: one, perfect staffing at every interval, every day. Instead of, staffing to your median, where, when it's busy, your customers are holding and they're getting frustrated. It's usually when they need you most. That's usually when the calls are the busiest. With a gig model, you can actually flex up to support all that volume. But on a slow day, which might be the very next day or a few days later, you might need half the number of people. And you've got to balance, in a traditional model, you have to kind of split the difference to say, well, I can't staff all the way to the peak and I can't staff all the way to the valley. But with gig, you can staff all the way to the peak, and then all the way down to the valley. So you're maximizing the customer experience and you're minimizing costs. This is perfect staffing. Gig CX is probably, in my opinion, the only way to really do that. Surge staffing. So, the unexpected does happen. And with gig models like shift offs, we're able to actually bring in 3 to 5 times as many people as you need. So you always have this bench of talent that's sitting there ready to go. So when something happens, a product outage, storms, or a seasonal event, or, you name it, anything can happen, whether it's planned or unplanned. You have access to people that know your brand, are trained, understand what you're doing, are really bought into your business, an extension of your team that's really ready to go whenever you need them. That's a huge lever that I think operators are going to really appreciate, especially when the unexpected happens. And then the other two areas where I've already kind of touched on, the hiring and retention, we're tapping into the agent value proposition in a way that we never have. Flexibility is a big deal. And as we integrate these Gig CX solutions into a brand or into a BPO, our flexibility enables the internal team's flexibility too. And that's way too deep of a topic to talk about now, but I really do think, and we have seen Gig CX enable broader flexibility across the entire contact center, not just the gig team. Huge ability to hire and retain when we know that that's a key decision, a key value, I should say, for workers. And then last, like I've already said, cost savings in the US. You don't have to go nearshore or offshore to get 35 to 50% savings. GigCX is an option, maybe your best option to get that savings while staying onshore. Again, we're really excited about that as a way to help companies maintain an onshore presence if that's important to the brand. Obviously, there's really great reasons to go nearshore and offshore. But if you want the opportunity to have US based work, but you don't know if you have the budget to spend, it really makes sense to look into GigCX as a way to get both. Again, as an operator, this is one of those things where I really wish I had this. And this is one of the reasons ShiftOff exists. Um, Last and probably most important, how do you know it works? I don't want to be the guinea pig if I'm operating a contact center. And good thing is you don't have to either, because we have a lot of examples of other companies, leading Fortune 500s, leading BPOs, and really examples across a whole spectrum of different sizes, shapes, and verticals of companies that have already used GigCX and are seeing the success. If you go to our website, and in fact, I'm going to link it into this video, we have a few case studies. One is a healthcare tech company that uses us on an ongoing basis. In fact, about 2 weeks ago, their volume doubled, but our abandon rate stayed under 5%. It's a great testament of our flexibility and our responsiveness and how GigCX can really help a business sort of stabilize the customer experience no matter what's going on. Another is a seasonal tax support, a case study for one of the leading tax software companies in the US, where we helped bring in 300 agents in just 3 weeks. So the scale and responsiveness of this GigCX model is really, really huge. More details in there. I'm excited to share that with you. And then the last case study we have, I would point you to, is a green energy company who had 10x volume overnight. They had something go on unexpected, and we were able to jump in just 48 hours and clear that and get staffed up and help them. So again, this is a really great opportunity to move quickly, to be flexible and to your customer needs, to save money, and to really attract and retain really great agents. So again, looking forward to continuing to share what we know about this industry with you. And please let us know if you have any questions or you'd like us to go deeper on any of these topics. Hope you guys have a great day, and talk to you soon.